Evergreen Heart. By Oprian. Chapter 13. Spies, Cards, and Doctors. Princess Celestia was sitting in her personal chambers working her way through a pile of documents. An elegant quill floated in her golden yellow aura as she worked her way through the stack of paperwork. The hour was getting late, but she wanted to finish this before she went to sleep. Her brow furrowed slightly in concentration as the quill quietly scratched across the parchment. The only other sound in the cozy room was the gentle crackle of the fireplace, the light it emitted casting everything in a warm glow. A faint rustle of fabric drew her attention to one of the balcony windows where one of the long curtains swayed gently as if disturbed by the evening breeze. But Celestia knew better. "Must you always make such a dramatic entrance, Borealis?" Emerging from the shadows as if he were one with them was a thestral stallion, his coat a deep midnight blue, almost black. His short spiky mane, by contrast, held subtle shades of light to deep violet, blue, and teal green. "It's sort of a requirement for my line of work, Your Highness." The stallion's warm bass voice was full of amusement. "And I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that you secretly get a kick out of it," Celestia retorted good-naturedly. He nodded his head respectfully but smiled all the same. "Guilty as charged, Your Highness." "How is your sister?" "Doing well, Your Highness. She's keeping an eye on your sister as we speak." "Anything I should know?" "Some of the royal guard are less than welcoming to Princess Luna, but then you already heard that." "From our guest, yes. But I wanted to make sure he was being truthful. Luna has been rather evasive on the subject." "I thought you said you believed him, Your Majesty? You and your sister seemed to get along with him well enough. A wise pony once told me, trust, but verify. I want to believe him, but some of the things he told Luna and I have me concerned. I will give him the benefit of the doubt and offer him friendship in good faith, but that doesn't mean I will simply turn him loose without some sort of oversight or contingency," Celestia said as she put down the quill and rolled up the scroll she had been working on, sealing it with a piece of ribbon and royal wax stamp. "His magical powers are formidable. By his own admission he destroyed an adult drake, and if the reports I received from Twilight Sparkle and other eyewitness accounts are accurate, he also decimated a large portion of the carnivorous wildlife in the Everfree forest. Not to mention fending off several skilled unicorn casters, my student among them, and the entire Ponyville Weather Patrol. Turning such a creature loose without oversight or simply trusting it blindly would be foolish in the extreme." Borealis nodded as he spoke. "I see how that makes you wary of him, but if that is the case, why not simply lock him in Tartarus and be done with it?" Celestia sighed, "Because that would be short-sighted and cruel. He seemed genuinely remorseful about the attack on our little ponies. And when he learned of the fate of Lyra Heartstrings, he did all he could to heal her affliction, without which she surely would not have survived. I sincerely doubt that a being who was truly malicious at heart would have done so. Unless it was all an act to save himself from your wrath." Borealis opted. "Possibly, however I do not believe it was. Even so, I will not risk the lives of my little ponies solely on my gut instinct. That is why I want you to keep an eye on him and keep a precise account of his actions. It's all moot at this point. If the tribunal finds him guilty, they may send him to Tartarus anyway. This whole trial is a farce as far as I'm concerned. A bunch of self-entitled colts and fillies throwing their weight around as part of a tantrum because they disagree with Mother's decision." Celestia snorted. "Is that how you see yourself, Highness? As a mother to us all?" Celestia snorted lightly. "Sometimes, I suppose. These bickering politicians and nobles certainly remind me of squabbling children often enough." "Have you learned who was responsible for getting the tribunal involved, Highness?" "Alas, no. Blue Blood was unable to identify the nobles in question." "Do we at least know who is presiding over the proceedings?" "Representatives of House Stormchaser, House Blessed Fields and House Lulamoon will be chosen as judges, if what Blue Blood heard is correct." "Well, it shall certainly prove to be interesting. I assume you and Lady Luna will be attending." "Indeed we shall. To make sure it is indeed a fair trial." Better you than me, your highness. I have neither the stomach nor the patience for politics. Neither does my sister. She was always much more at home on the battlefield than in the political arena, so to speak. It is good to have the Lady Luna with us again. Borealis said wistfully. I take it you and your kin in the Night Guard have been looking forward to my sister's return the most. But of course, highness. Having Princess Luna back with us, it's like being reunited with long-lost family. Just to be in her presence fills our hearts with warmth and joy. Borealis said with adoration, no disrespect to you, of course, Princess Celestia. He hastily added. Celestia let out a light-hearted chuckle, no offense taken, old friend, it is good to know that some ponies have been looking forward to her return with joy rather than dread. It is not surprising you feel such exuberance in her presence, considering she had a hoof in creating your ancestors. That forges a bond that goes beyond blood, kinship, or magic. I was told the legends, but I never really believed they were true. So the princess really did create our ancestors. Celestia nodded, she did, long before her time as Nightmare Moon. That brings me to the other matter you asked me to look into, highness. Borealis said, shaking Celestia out of her guilty thoughts. Ah yes, of course, how could I have forgotten, what do you have to report? She said, her expression suddenly guarded. We followed their trail all the way to a hideout in Hollow Shades, but there was nothing left there. They simply vanished as if they had never been there at all. They cleaned the place out, no documents, no traces, nothing. We questioned some of the locals, but it all turned up empty. That's most disturbing. What do you want us to do now? With nothing to go on, there is precious little we can do. Have your agents continue business as usual but remain alert for any trace, rumor, or sightings. The moment they make a mistake or show a glimpse of themselves, we will come down on them like a thunderstorm. As you wish, your highness. Was there anything else? Celestia shook her head. No, you may go about your duties. Borealis bowed respectfully. By your leave then. I bid you good night and pleasant dreams. With those parting words he stepped back and faded into the shadows, as if he had never been there at all. Celestia tried to return to her paperwork, but found herself unable to concentrate. Her thoughts plagued by yet more worries. Well, as far as dungeons go, this wasn't so bad. In fact, it was actually quite pleasant. I was expecting a dark, damp cell with rusty iron bars and a bucket for a loo. Well, the bucket was still there, but lucky for me, I don't have that function anymore. But the cell itself was actually okay. There were 4 cells in total, adjacent to a guard room. It was clean, the bars weren't rusty. In fact, they looked freshly polished, as if someone had wanted to make a good impression or something. Weird, right? I even had sunlight coming in from several barred windows in the wall opposite my cell. The cell itself was made of bare stone. It held a single cot to rest on and nothing else, beside the aforementioned bucket. My one enemy though was boredom. I've been in this cell since last night, and the novelty of it has worn off. So did you guys draw the short straw or what? I spoke to the 2 guards who were sitting at a small table on the far wall below the window, their spears propped up against the wall. There were at least 2 guards stationed in the room at all times, most likely to keep an eye on me to make sure I didn't pull a vanishing act or made trouble. These 2 had been here since dawn and were clearly as bored as I was. One was a white mare, the other a grey stallion. Quiet, prisoner. The mare said curtly. Oh, come on fellas, don't be like that. How about a little conversation to pass the time, hey? We are not allowed to fraternize with the inmates. Oh come on, you must be as bored as I am. Stoic silence was my only reply. How about a game of cards? I bet you guys have a deck on you. How would you know? Said the stallion. It's like a universal rule, guards like card games. So what ya say we play a few rounds? Ain't gonna happen, said the mare. How about a wager then? I bet you I can walk straight out of this cell. Yeah sure, and I'm the tooth breezy. The stallion smirked. If I can walk right out of this cell, you will have to play some card games with me. Whatever you say, prisoner. The mare said nonchalantly. Clearly she thought I was pulling their legs. If I had a proper face I would have grinned impishly. Instead I walked right up to the bars, and with a little push from my magic I simply squeezed straight through them like I was Mr. Fantastic himself. The vines and twigs that made up my body simply bending and curving around the bars before reforming. Both guards jumped in panic and fumbled for their spears. Hey, get back in your cell, right now. The stallion stuttered as he leveled his weapon at me. Sure, but you owe me a card game. I say as I point a finger at him. After all, a bet is a bet. About an hour later the door that leads into the guard room pushes open to admit none other than Shining Armor. His eyes go wide as he takes in the scene before him. I'm back in my cell, like I promised, but the two guards have pushed their little table up against the bars so I can reach my hands through, and we're right in the middle of our game. Their backs are to the door so they haven't noticed Shining's entry yet. Got any fives? The mare whose name I learned was Sunny Spring asks me. Go fish. Yeah, we're playing Go Fish. I would have gone with poker, but none of us had any chips or bits for that matter. Besides, poker with just 3 people is kind of dull. At least these two have warmed up to me a little, which I found kind of surprising. I fully expected them to ignore the bet and just get angry, but they were good sports about it once they got over their initial panic. As Shining Armor gets over the shock of the scene before him, he walks up to us with an angry glare. Hey Shiny, wanna join us? I say as casually as possible. The two guards panic nonetheless as they realize who's standing behind them. See, Captain. Sunny Spring stammers. Her grey partner goes white as a ghost. Just what the buck are you two doing? You are supposed to guard the prisoner, not fraternize with him. Oh, lay off them, Shining, we were going nuts just sitting here staring at each other. Besides, they were technically still keeping an eye on me, we were just entertaining ourselves while doing so. No harm done. That's Captain Armor to you, prisoner. And you have a visitor. He says, pointing a hoof at the doorway. From said doorway emerges a verditer-colored minotaur, tall as a mountain and dressed in a deep blue suit and red tie. And apparently no pants. Is there some kind of social stigma when it comes to pants? Shining marches the guards out the door, presumably to read them the riot act. Did he always have a stick up his plot, or is he just extra on edge today? I don't have time to ponder the question as the Minotaur steps up to the bars. Greetings, Ironclad Case is the name, defense attorney is my game. Prince Blueblood said you were in need of counsel. He bellows with gusto as he offers me a hand to shake. My head momentarily spins from his stentorian introduction. Seriously, has this guy ever heard of volume control? Are you in any way related to Iron Will? The question slips out before I realize it. I have a cousin by that name, runs workshops, or some such. You know him? Only by reputation. I fib as I take his hand and give him a firm shake. Well, anyhow, we need to discuss your case, Mr. Aaron, was it? That's right. Are you aware of the charges being brought against you? Not really, aside from the obvious. They have told me nothing. He frowns. Do you have a list? He proceeds to bring out a briefcase from. I have no idea where. Do they have hammer space in this world? Or a bag of holding? A dimensional pocket? It would certainly clear a few things up. I swear I will get to the bottom of it if it's the last thing I do. Perhaps it will be, if things go pear-shaped for me in the worst way. The clearing of his throat grabs my attention, he's now holding a list. Let's see, there's the charge of murder for killing the dragon. Self-defense. I respond curtly, to which he hums. Off the record, as a former warrior in the Taurian army, I salute your skills and prowess as a warrior for slaying a drake. He whispers, or what passes as a whisper for him. To anyone else it would be a normal speaking volume. You are also being charged with assault, destruction of property, use of illegal magics, and poaching. Yeah, the assault and destruction of property was the beast's doing. I have no idea what illegal magics they are talking about, and poaching? What the heck? They likely wish to fine you for hunting the monsters of the Everfree without a license. That is ridiculous. And a minor thing compared to the other charges on the list. Since you admitted to killing the dragon, there is no way you can plead not guilty. The best we can do there is try and strike a deal and hope for leniency. As for the assault and destruction charges, we need to prove you were not in control. An expert in spirit possessions would be vital to your defense. Lastly, there's the use of forbidden magics. What forbidden magics? I know exactly dick about magic. Hell in a handbasket, most of my magic just works through dumb luck, instinct, and pure willpower. I have a preliminary analysis report here by one Twilight Sparkle. She's apparently an expert on the subject. We can call her up as an expert witness. Assuming she's not working with the prosecution. I don't think she likes me very much. Her like or dislike of you is irrelevant. I will contact her as soon as we are done here. For the next hour we discussed our defense strategy. But I was honestly not optimistic. Even if everything went my way, I was looking at a minimum 10 to 16 months of prison time, if not outright banishment from equestrian soil for a minimum of 1 year for slaying the Drake. Worst case, they would throw me in Tartarus with the likes of Tyrek. Though Ironclad was optimistic that would not happen, I myself was a lot more skeptical, the way fate seemed determined to mess things up for me. Starhorn strolled casually through Ponyville. He was currently off duty and feeling pretty good. The day had started off a tad chilly, but the mid-morning sun had driven away the last of the cold and the birds were out en masse and filling the air with their song. Just as he passed one of the inner bridges that led away from the market square, a chipper young voice called to him from behind. "Mornin', Mr. Starhorn, where ya headin' off to?" He looked behind himself to see a trio of little fillies walking up to the bridge. "Morning, Apple Bloom, right?" "T'ha's right," the little filly said chipperly, "and you member Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo?" The other two fillies waved a hoof in greeting. "Of course, how could I forget? Especially after your little stunt." The three smiled sheepishly. "So where ya off to, Mr. Horn? You on special guard business?" Scootaloo asked, excitement clear in her voice. "Actually no, it's my day off. I was on my way to Ponyville General to see if Miss Zakora's condition has changed yet. Would it be okay if we tagged along?" Apple Bloom asked. Scootaloo looked a little disappointed, clearly preferring to go on an adventure instead. "I suppose it's all right," Starhorn said. "Just don't break anything." "We wouldn't," Sweetie Belle protested. "Not on purpose, I'd reckon, but I've heard the stories around town about you three. In just a short while you three have caused more chaos around Ponyville than any other pony in living memory." "We're not that bad," Scootaloo protested hotly, but Starhorn only chuckled. "Come on, let's go visit the hospital, and afterwards I will buy you girls lunch." It did not take long for them to reach Ponyville General. The nurse at the front desk greeted them with a smile and smoothly directed them to Zakora's room, since she remembered them from the other day. As they approached the room, however, they were surprised by the sounds of a clatter and a thud followed by pained groaning. Starhorn immediately dashed ahead of the three fillies and threw open the door. Zakora lay in a tangled heap on the floor, half wrapped in the sheets. She was struggling wildly to throw them off her whilst speaking rapidly in her native tongue. The look in the eyes was panicked and unfocused. "Girls, get the nurse!" Starhorn barked before he galloped over to Zakora's side. "Easy, easy there, miss, you are safe." The zebra's eyes turned to him and slowly seemed to clear. She stopped fighting the bed sheets as if they were trying to strangle her and let out a shaky breath. "It's all right, miss, I got you," Star said calmly as he helped her off the floor with his telekinesis. Moments later they were joined by the Crusaders, who returned with a nurse. The nurse in question immediately began to examine Zakora. "Ah, my head, it feels as if it were used like a drum. She groaned, "You my good pony, do you know why it does?" "Easy there Miss Zecora," said the nurse, "you have been unconscious for a long time. Try not to exert yourself too much yet. With your request I shall acquiesce, for I do not wish to cause distress." "You certainly have a way with words." Starhorn smiled, "How are you feeling? Any pain besides the headache?" Zecora shook her head, slowly, not wanting to aggravate her condition. "Please relax while I go inform the doctor of your condition. I will return shortly," said the nurse before she trotted off. "Hi Miss Zecora, glad you're okay." Zecora looked over to the little yellow filly that had addressed her. "If my memory has not failed me on the spot, your name is Apple Bloom, is it not?" "That's right, I'm glad y'all remember me," Bloom said with a smile. "How could I forget such a charming little filly?" she croaked. "Would you like some water, miss?" Starhorn asked. She gave him a nod, and he busied himself grabbing a plastic cup from the small supply cabinet in the room and filling it with water from the adjacent washroom tap. Zecora greedily drank it down once he levitated it over to her. She couldn't remember the last time her throat had felt so dry. She coughed and spluttered a bit after the first gulp, but the cool water felt so good to her parched throat. "Do you remember what happened before you lost consciousness?" Star asked after she recovered and set aside the empty cup. "The last thing I remember was assisting a friend, before it all came to a sudden end." Before he could ask her to elaborate, they were interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Horse and the nurse from earlier. The doctor immediately began a series of examinations. First came the regular things like blood pressure and listening to her heartbeat and lungs. Then came the magical scans and diagnostic spells. Lastly, the nurse brought in a set of different colored crystals. The doctor floated them up to her one by one and passed them over various areas of her body. Every once in a while one of them would light up like a small light bulb, drawing a contemplative hum or quiet aha from the doctor. "Well Miss Zecora, you seem to be making a full recovery. I can detect no lasting side effects or injuries. You should be back to normal in a few days." "But something is wrong, I cannot hear the world song. Since I woke up in this bed, there has been nothing but silence in my head," she replied. "World song?" the doctor asked, puzzled. "She is referring to the zebra's magical connection to the earth around them. Much like earth ponies are connected to the land. We ponies call it the ether flow." Starhorn interjected. "I see," said the doctor with mild surprise, "I can assure you the loss of your magical sense is temporary. It is a side effect from the treatment. We had to purge a large amount of corruptive magic from your focal pathways, as a result your magical senses are temporarily numbed." Zecora let out a sigh of relief as she sank back into the soft mattress. "I don't understand, I thought only unicorns had magic," Sweetie Belle said. "Actually all natural creatures have arcane pathways because every species on Equus is magical to some degree. It's simply that unicorns like you and me have evolved to actively channel that magic through their horn. Zebra might lack said horn, but they have learned to wield magic in their own way." Starhorn answered the little filly. "You just take it easy now Miss Zecora, we will have you right as rain in no time," Dr. Horse said before he left the room. "I hope my stay here won't be too long, last time I came to Ponyville I was not welcome." "Y'all don't have to worry about that Miss Zecora, no pony is gonna bother ya ever again, and you are welcome in town now," Apple Bloom said. "I sense there is a tale to tell, would you share it with me as well?" "You can thank Sergeant Fireshot for that," Star said as he informed her of what transpired the other day. Mayor Mare stood nervously on the podium in front of Town Hall as more and more ponies filled the town square. Next to her stood 3 members of the Royal Guard as well as Applejack. "Miss Apple, do you know what this is all about?" Mayor Mare asked nervously. She had been trotting on eggshells after the fiery earth pony sergeant had nearly bashed her office door off its hinges and demanded she round up the town for an important announcement. "All I know is it has something to do with Zecora." The farm pony answered quietly. Once every pony was present, Mare stepped up to the microphone. Fillies and gentle colts, I have asked you here because the Royal Guard wish to make an announcement, so without further ado. She stepped back to allow Fire Shot to step up to the mic. All right, pin your ears on and listen up because I will only say this once, you sorry excuses for ponies. She belted out in her best drill instructor voice, making several ponies flinch while others reflexively stood up straight. My name is Sergeant Fire Shot, and here's the long and short of it. It has come to my attention that there are some idiotic rumors going around town regarding a certain zebra who lives in the Everfree forest. For those of you who don't know what I'm on about, I'm talking about Zecora. Now I have heard a lot of strange things, like how she eats foals or how she is supposedly an evil enchantress who was responsible for the recent monster attack on Ponyville. Those rumors stop here and now. Uncertain murmurs rose up from the crowd. She gave the gathered ponies her trademark death glare. Did I say you all could talk, you doe-eyed daisy brains? Shut your cake holes and listen up. Those rumors are completely baseless nonsense. If you weren't such a bunch of sheltered country hicks, you would know that a zebra is almost the same as any earth pony. Just because she happens to have stripes in her coat doesn't mean she's some foal-devouring monster. But she lives in the bucking Everfree, one pony in the crowd shouted. What did I tell you about shutting your noise hole? Do I need to come down there and fold your flank in half? She lives in the Everfree because the Everfree is very much like her native homeland. Yes, you heard me. Zebrica is a place where most forests, or jungles as they are called, are more like the Everfree than say the Whitetail Woods. To her, living in such a place is no stranger than a Pegasus living in a cloud house. But I heard she was doing all kinds of creepy magic. Another pony shouted. From what we've learned, she is apparently a herbalist and alchemist and has received at least some shamanistic training. For those who know nothing of zebra culture, that means all of you. A shaman is a respected healer and spiritual leader among zebra society. You ponies should feel privileged to have someone of such skill living nearby. Instead, you treated her like a leper. Now the reason I'm telling you all this is because right now that poor zebra is being treated at Ponyville General for injuries she sustained during the monster attack. She paused for a second to let her words sink in. I will say this one more time, she was not responsible for the attack, and I will not tolerate you lot treating her like she's an outcast just because she's different. This is your only warning. If I hear any more of these idiotic rumors, or worse, if any one of you dares to harass her or treat her in a manner unbecoming of a pony, I will personally track you down and kick your flank all the way to Canterlot, where you can spend a day and night in the dungeons. Is that clear? A few nervous coughs were her only reply. I said, is that bucking clear? She boomed in an impressive imitation of the royal Canterlot voice. Yes ma'am, the entire town square answered. Good. Have a nice evening every pony, she said sweetly before stepping off the stage. Zecora tried her hardest not to laugh as Starhorn finished his tale. It seems I owe you a thank you. Just doing my job, ma'am. There is still one worry to which you might put an end. Do you know what became of my friend? Starhorn let out a sigh. That is where things get complicated, ma'am. He said heavily as he began to explain what had happened during the time she was unconscious. When he finished, her face had settled into a contemplative frown. Suddenly she threw the blankets off herself and slowly got to her hooves. Wait a second, what are you doing? Stay in this hospital I cannot, for we must hurry to Canterlot.